Let's get started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming out today. For those that don't know me, I'm Dale Gann. I'm the president of the council that puts on the Denver Gem and Mineral Show that's right down the hall here. Our first speaker today is Ed Raines. He has been an active member of the, I'm going to say, Rock County community ever since I've been in Denver, and I've been here for a while. So Ed is currently the curator at the Colorado School of Mines Museum of Earth Sciences. He is a past president of both the Mining History Association and the Colorado chapter of Friends of Mineralogy. He has written numerous papers on geology, mineralogy, and mining history for many Colorado mining districts, several of which have received special awards from Friends of Mineralogy. In 2009, his book, Historic Photos of Colorado Mining, was published by Turner Publishing. And in 2019, he received the Rodman Paul Award for outstanding contributions to mining history. So he is, believe it or not, going to be talking about Colorado minerals today, not the history of the world. So if you would, please welcome Ed.
I am amused at people's reaction to that slide. And if you don't think that that is something that's important, even to our heavy-duty science, then you need to rethink the way that stuff actually works in the world. Mm-hmm. You could use, every historian at some point in time has given a list of what are the fundamental elements of civilization. Will Durant's is as good as anybody's, and he's a bit more concise. But nonetheless, for the last 2 years, I don't think I have this thing turned on. I forgot to do that. Okay, so now, every talk that I have given for the last 2 years starts out with this, and it's because it is so fundamental to what we're doing and how we got here and how come we have a place that we can give this program. So, when I was the president of the Colorado chapter of Friends of Mineralogy, we finally published the Minerals of Colorado in 1997. And at that time, we had 67, this is an interesting thing to move around. Okay, what you gotta do is do it down here. Okay, we had 67 type minerals from Colorado, according to who was doing the counting. And that was out of a total of, I don't know, 600-700 total species from Colorado. Today, MnDAT says, and this is as of last month, and it is MnDAT, which does not have a full-time staff to be able to check this stuff out. There were 887 minerals from Colorado, and best guess is that there's around 107 type minerals. Now that's my calculation, and we'll talk about that a little bit because this turns out to be something that is actually fairly complicated. In Colorado, we have a number of geologic provinces. All you do is look at a map and you can figure some of this stuff out. And the type minerals, and this surprises everybody when they see this slide, the place where there are more type minerals than any place else is on the Colorado Plateau, which is where the uranium and vanadium deposits are located. The vanadium deposits were mined in the early part of the 20th century. And were actually quite important. And then by mid-century, people were interested in the uranium part of it. And we always think that everything is tied to the mineral belt, and it does come in second. But there are 33 type minerals from the mineral belt. There are 2 from carbonatites, both of them in Gunnison County. And there's actually one hot spring sublimate, I don't remember the name of the mineral, but it's from Mount Princeton Hot Springs. There are 11 from pegmatites. I would have thought that that number would have been higher, but it's not. There's one from other igneous volcanic associations, and that's actually one of the ones that's kind of iffy. It's cowlocite, which originally was reported from California, except somehow now it's been assigned to being from Table Mountain and Jefferson County. It's one of these odd things. Don't know why that's happening. And the last one is in the minerals of Colorado. And to me, this is truly fascinating. And it is the mineral peritite from the Horse Creek meteorite. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that is a type mineral in the solar system. But since the meteorite was found in Colorado, it made the list. Now, I have to say, Pete's here, and I think he would agree with me when we were putting together the finishing touches on the minerals of Colorado. There were several people that were on the committee, and Pete was not one of them, and I was not one of them, who wanted to have as many minerals from Colorado as they could possibly claim, and they wanted to have as many type minerals as they could possibly claim. And so that's why that meteorite is on the list. So, if you were to break it down by where they actually occur, it's real obvious if you're talking about the Colorado Plateau, San Miguel in combination with two other counties, plus Montrose County, plus Mesa County, are going to have the most number of type minerals. And all of this stuff is from research that accompanied various mining operations and people with the survey and individual geologists who furnished lots and lots of material that they shipped out to the LA County Museum, and Tony Camp has been doing all of that analysis for the last, 20 years, something like that, maybe longer. And that's where all of this has actually come from. And you get down here to places like Lake County, Teller County, the heart of the mineral belt, or the main outlier in the case of Teller County for the mineral belt, and the numbers are really pretty sparse. So, this is the Colorado Mineral Belt, and there are actually two parts to it. The original one is the one that's shown with the sort of turquoise color, and then it was extended by P.K. Sims and some of his compatriots at the USGS to that dotted blue line. And for all practical purposes, if you leave out the Colorado Plateau, every economically important mining district in the state of Colorado, with the exception of Cripple Creek and Westcliff, Silvercliff, and Summitville, are in the mineral belt. Now, there are plenty of people in the USGS who are currently trying to downplay the importance of the mineral belt. But it will always stand if you are measuring things by economics. Because you can't undo 100, 150 years worth of mining history and where that actually occurred. And it doesn't really matter except that it is related to some Precambrian structures. And if we go on then and apply the Colorado Plateau area, it's actually this shaded portion over here that extends all over into Utah that turns out to be the place where there are more type minerals. And we won't spend much time talking about that at all. So, these are, and this is my list, these are the type minerals from Colorado that I could say, oh, okay, I know what that is. Doesn't mean I have the chemical formula memorized, but these are the ones that most people are familiar with, which leaves close to 100 that are simply strange names from locations that you probably have never even heard of. And this is also the heart of what most people would be able to find available to put into their collection. And just because they're the common ones, that doesn't mean that they're easy to find something that is a representative specimen. So then the question becomes, all right, if you're going to give a talk on this, how do you photograph something that you can't find? And you can't find anything, even if you find something that's worth a photograph. And how do you relate that to a talk? And so this is why I ended up with the Wilder-Rant thing. Once again, I've not broken my record for 2 years now. So what I'm going to talk about is how all of this stuff got started in Colorado as far as type minerals and locations, and I'm going to focus in on one particular area which will probably surprise you. And it is because there were, in 1859, people all up and down the Missouri River whose farms were in bad shape economically, and so this turns out to be the western portion of civilization at that particular time, essentially right at the river. And there were two towns, Nebraska City and Brownville, Nebraska, that had two guys that heard about the gold, and it was called the Pikes Peak Gold Rush. One of them was Thomas Akins, and I can't remember whether he was from Brownville or Nebraska City. I think he was from Nebraska City. And he teamed up with A.A. Brookfield, and the two of them led an expedition west, small wagon train of people that wanted to look for gold. And as they made their way west, it was real easy to just go up from Nebraska City to the Platte River Trail, which was also the Overland Trail for a long stretch of it, and that was the way that people came to the west, and that's part of the Oregon Trail. If you were to branch out up here and take the North Platte, you could end up on the Oregon Trail. So this is the way that they were coming. And when they got to right about here, just a little bit north of Denver. You need to do this on the screen, not up there, you can't control it. So they end up in this particular place, and there's a trading post that provided goods and services to all of the trappers and traders for years. It was called Fort St. Vrain. And supposedly Akins crawled up in that tower, and he looked to the west, and he said, well, we don't have to go to Cherry Creek. We don't have to go to Pikes Peak. I haven't even figured out where Pikes Peak is. I know where Cherry Creek sort of is, but I don't know how to get there. But if I look to the west, the mountains look good for gold, and the prairie looks good for grazing. Now, how do you know it was good for grazing? Well, probably because there were some buffalo wandering around out there, and it looked like they were starving. Okay, I'm a geologist with I don't know how much experience now, more than I care to mention. I still have not been able to figure out how you look at a mountain and tell you that it looks good for gold. But anyway, Akins said, we're going to turn west. And when he did that, he ended up in the area where Boulder is now located. And there was this area right along the foothills where there were these rocks that were sticking up, and he said, you know, if the Native American population decides that they're going to attack us, this would provide a place where we could defend ourselves. And so they camped there. And there's all kinds of legends about their encounter with Chief Niwot and all of this stuff, but that's not a part of the story. And from there, they made their way to the area where Gold Hill is going to be located. And they didn't go up the standard route that most people use going to Gold Hill. Instead, they came from over in this direction and went on some game trails and ended up in the area of Gold Hill. And they found some gold. In fact, they staked a claim that was called the Horsefall Claim, And it's not because there was a horse that fell down the shaft, it was because it was named for David Horsfall, who was one of the guys that founded the thing. And it was the mainstay of this fledgling little community that sort of tottered between failing and thinking it was being prosperous, but not really, for a number of years. And in fact, if you look at from 1861 all the way up to 1871, there are only 12 mining claims that were staked. And that's not what you call a prosperous mining community. But in 1872, there was a discovery. And that introduces the topic then of the type minerals. Now, everybody that was in the community of Gold Hill at that particular time, if they were married, probably had a wife who was saying, why don't you go find some gold? I mean, we came here to do this. We came to find the gold. You haven't found any gold. Now get out there and find some. And the guys that actually saved the day for that community were two guys. One was named Christian Holk, and the other one was Joseph Stepler. And in 1872, they decided that they were going to do a little bit more prospecting. And they went a little bit to the north of Gold Hill. Gold Hill didn't have as many buildings at that time. And they went up to the side of the hill along a gulch that comes, the gulch is actually called Lickskillet. You can still drive up there. I wouldn't do it in the winter. It's not a paved road, and if it's snowy and icy, it's not a good way to go. But anyway, and they ended up at a claim that they staked called the Red Cloud. And they found some rocks that looked promising. And this is the Red Cloud mine dumps as you would see it today. It's actually standing down at Lickskillet looking up at the hillside. And they took him in and they had him assay. And the assays were very good, but they had no idea what they were looking at. And this is a sample of the kind of thing that they were looking at. And the main key is this silvery looking stuff here. It's the mineral sylvanite, which is a gold-silver telluride mineral. Not at all common. And there was also some altiite, which is a lead telluride, not particularly valuable, but it comes with the gold-silver mineralization. And then there's this mixture of stuff in here that's very, very fine-grained. Hard to tell anything about it. But the thing that was actually interesting was the sylvanite. And this is another specimen that actually shows you sort of the habit of the mineral sylvanite. And they had great assays. They had no idea what they were looking at. So they took it to the U.S. Mint, which by now had been in operation for a number of years. They actually bought out the old Clark Gruber coinage operation. They weren't really coining anything. They were simply buying gold and they were shipping it off to Philadelphia to be minted up there. And Byron Sanford, his wife Molly, actually wrote a book about their western journey and how she eventually hooks up with Byron and they get married. It's an interesting book. She was never quite satisfied with the fact that this was a level-headed young man who didn't seem to have a whole lot of flash, but nonetheless he had gotten a steady job at the U.S. Mint, and he looked at the specimens and he said, I don't know what this is. So he took them to the Mint director. It was J.F.L. Shermer, who used a spectroscope and identified tellurium. And goes, I don't really know what this is, but I know that gold combines with tellurium in other places in the world. And so he sent it off to Professor Gimp at the Philadelphia Academy, and he was actually the guy that originally described the mineral calaverite in California. And he didn't describe it as an actual type mineral from there. He actually thought it was just a variety of sylvinite, but later on it was established as a type mineral from California. And so this is again how muddy the waters are about type locations and things like this, because they will change every time somebody new comes along and makes a new discovery. So anyway, Steppler and Holt now have this claim, and they were suddenly confronted with one of the great realities of life, and that's economics part of Will Durant's Elements of Civilization. And that is that all mining is capital intensive up front before you collect anything, before you get any money. You have to do all of the work and then you get paid. So they ended up giving away 15/16 for operating expenses, and after all of their work, they only had 1/16 left of the ownership of their Red Cloud mine. So once again now, we look after their discovery, and from that time all the way up to the end of the century, there's 1,100, almost 1,200 claims that are staked in this general area. And that shows what making this discovery is all about, and the discovery is key to the fact that there were these unknown minerals as far as the prospectors were going, that they had to deal with. And it then turns into something that has been a tradition and holds true today. You're dealing with telluride minerals. And the circumstances are that they are rare and they're often valuable. But they're rare. And they're not usually recognized by the untrained eye, but they're rare. And they're difficult to find specimens to study, and I might add, difficult to find specimens to photograph. But they're rare, and they're hard to identify, but they're rare, and that's the important part. And if you actually look on a worldwide basis, and this map would not be really true today, but there are only 5 places that have significant telluride deposits. And now there are some in China and Russia, and we don't really know all that much about them. There's definitely some information that is being withheld. But these are the places: Fiji, Kalgoorlie, in the Pacific, Kirkland Lake, and then in Colorado, Boulder County and Cripple Creek, and there's other places that become important in Colorado. And the one that I didn't cover is in Romania, or in those days known as Transylvania at Nagyog. And that was actually a deposit that was mined by the Romans. The Romans didn't know what tellurium was either. So we've got something like 2,000 specimens. That's rocks, minerals, fossils, everything that are on exhibit, and they're in something like 50 type exhibits. And there are only 25 telluride minerals that are on display. And so that's 1.25% of the total thing. And that doesn't have anything to do with whether we have a preference for tellurides or not. We're not trying to shortchange it. I actually got an angry letter from a guy that said that he was here to promote the mineral imposite because we didn't have a piece out. And the answer was, we don't have anything that's worth looking at that we could put out. Believe me, I would put it out. And if you look at the gold deposits of Europe, many of which Romans operated, it's that number 21 right there. That is Nagyog, and that is in a state of Romania called Transylvania, which brings up my childhood. This was something that, it's an important part of the only reason I know where tellurium originally shows up is because I watched the movie Dracula probably 20 times over my lifetime. But Franz Joseph Müller discovered tellurium in 1782 with minerals from Nagyag. And he named the mineral sylvanite, which has gone through a lot of name changes, originally being called Weiss gold, which was white gold ore because it doesn't look like gold. And then Blancgold and Banya, white gold of often Banya. And then Aureum graphicum, which means graphic gold, and we'll talk about that in a second. And the next one was writing ore, and then graphic tellurium, and then sylvane, and finally in 1835 we settled on the mineral name sylvanite, and that's the way that it's been ever since then. This is a piece of sylvanite. And if you look at these lines, there's two of them that go across like this, and then there are these little branching things that go out from those lines. If you have a really good imagination, and that means that it has to be a better imagination than mine because I don't see this, but this is why it's called graphic tellurium, because it's supposed to look like cuneiform writing. There are people that come up to me after the talk and say, well, you're crazy, you just don't have a good imagination. Sorry, I guess I don't. But the point is, that's what sylvanite is supposed to be looking like. And it was finally, in 1792, the Martin Klaproth isolated the element of tellurium. The previous guy had only figured out that there was this element. He didn't know what it was, and he found the mineral. And now tellurium is actually named. And tellurium is this silvery gray metal. These are two ingots that we have in the museum. And it turns out it's a very important mineral in today's world because it's used for photovoltaic cells. Your solar energy panels usually have tellurium in them. And so it's something that, once again, economics is going to step in, science and technology steps in, and it's suddenly of real importance, and we'll see what happens with tellurium deposits in the future. So, back to the Gold Hill area map. And one of the things that you notice are these red lines. And these are Precambrian structures. They are probably related to the collision of the Wyoming province with this Mazatol province, which Colorado was a part of, in the Precambrian. And those turn out to be very important for all of these deposits here in the Boulder area. And if you actually look at a map that shows the veins, which are running basically northeast, southwest, and the little red dots that look like lines are where there are actually mine shafts are at its located. And if you look at that map, you can see that there is a structural component to how this actually was mined in the early days. And that is that this reef, the Hoosier Reef, seems to have been sort of a barrier that held those solutions in, and this reef, the Fortune Reef, seems to have been a pathway perhaps for fluids to come through. And when they get over in this area, once again, they are concentrated around these reef structures, and in the Maxwell Reef, again, it's sort of a barrier. There isn't anything on the other side. And so this is essentially a funnel that all of these ore-forming solutions come into. And this is probably a completely different feature from some sort of igneous feature down on a hillside, but it's not in that same mineralization. This is the Hoosier Reef. This is after the forest fire. And it's this feature that cuts across, and you can see if all the trees were there, you'd have a hard time actually seeing it. And so this becomes something that's important for prospectors, is that they have to look among the trees and the weeds and stuff like this to find the keys to what they're actually trying to find. And then this is another view, once again. The only reason that you can see that thing is because of that forest fire. And now it's actually starting to grow back up. Those trees have not completely regrown. You can actually still see it. And when you get up close to the rock, it's obviously badly mangled rock. There is a whole lot of quartz, there is a whole lot of felspar, there's some black stuff which is mostly hematite. It accumulates in my toilet tank. I actually live on the Hoosier Reef, so I have a great water supply, but a lot of iron that's in it. And you can really see a structure in here that shows this sheer movement of a very deep set of faults that are crossing this whole area. And this is a view in the cache mine, and the guy's actually pointing to the Hoosier Reef as it shows up underground. Pretty nondescript, and it's a lousy picture, but it was underground. Okay, so these are the gold and silver minerals that are in combination with tellurium in Colorado. And the red ones are the ones that are actually important. And the ones that are shown in italics are the ones that are type minerals in Colorado. And the one that the guy was telling me that we were very negligent for not having a specimen of was imbricite, which is a rare mineral. And it was found originally not in the Boulder area, but over in the Bonanza district. And the other one here is buckhornite, which is really an unusual one that again shows you how complicated this whole process becomes, because buckhornite's type specimen, I've forgotten now whether it's in Harvard or at the Smithsonian, but somebody was studying a polished section of a sample from the Buckhorn mine, which was actually a placer plain right along James Creek. It's very hard to even figure out where it is today. I drive by it every single day when I come down to the museum. And that piece turns out to be one of two. Jack Murphy later found a specimen from the Buckhorn mine. He had some analysis work done on it, and so to the best of my knowledge, there's only two specimens of it in the world, or at least from Colorado. You know, they could have shown up in mass quantities from China or Russia for all I know. But buckhornite is one of these type localities, and you can't just go there and say, well, you know, it was found in this vein that crossed over at this particular place on this structure, because nobody knows, because it's from one specimen that was in the drawers. So, as it turns out, there are actually several other type minerals from this general area. And this basically is going along with the development of a mining community of the whole system, and the fact that there is a particular kind of mineralization. If you were to transfer this over to the western slope, you could do the same thing with vanadium deposits and find that these were minerals that were found in association with these ore deposits. So the cache mine, which is really just right across the road from the old Red Cloud Coal Spring operation, is one of the better known places, and this is a view showing the Hoosier Reef, and that is the mine dumps of the cache mine. And so it's right there on that system, and really is at almost the far tip of the funnel where these fluids moved up from the south. And This is typical cash ore. That ugly black lump is petsite with minor gold. It's not a Colorado-type mineral, but this is what they were actually mining. Therefore, if you find something else, what you're actually going to find it in is something like this. This is another piece of cash ore, and it has been sliced, and all of these little silvery things here, and there's some that are sort of gold colored, are telluride minerals. There's probably 5 or 6 of them that are in there. And there's going to be at least one of them that's in that, because I know something about the ore, that's going to be Coloradoite. Back to the red cloud, here is a specimen of good ore, and that's mostly gold and pyrite, but this little streak here is altite, not a tight mineral, but one of the important telluride minerals that shows up. And all of these things are combined in this package that you have to deal with looking for them. So you go up to the slide mine in the Corning Tunnel. This is one of the truly important mines in that district. And this is a cross-sectional view. This is the slide vein. And that's the Corning Tunnel portal. And so it is going through a whole series of veins that nobody even thought about, because they didn't really crop out with anything that was promising. But the slide was one of the major producing operations during the early part of the 20th century and the latter part of the 19th century. So all of these telluride minerals were being found in there, including Coloradoite, and this is the Corning Tunnel in its actual heyday. And it was a big operation. And it was mining gold that becomes a story of local history, because there were some high graders that were actually working there, and they sold some stuff at the Denver Mint, except that the guy wrote down their license plate and arrested them when they left with their paycheck. And the sheriff confiscated all of the stuff as evidence. And as it turns out, the sheriff, when he retired from Boulder, moved to Kansas, and Brian Lees bought this specimen and a bunch of them from his descendants after they had all died. And it comes back to one of these stories, and there are little bitty blebs of minerals all in that contain what were probably tight minerals. This is also the mine that produced the picture that we used in Minerals of Colorado of hessite. Again, not a tight mineral, but it's right there with all of them, and you can see some of these little bitty things that are in there. That's the kind of stuff that you have to look for when you're looking for these tight minerals, because most of the time they're rare because they're tellurides. And they're hard to identify because they're tellurides, but they're rare. So this is the Rex, and the Rex is very well known for these telluride minerals. And this is a specimen. Hessite is an important mineral there, and this rounded form of these goofy crystals turns out to be a regular habit for hessite in some places, but all of this stuff around here has got Coloradoite as very small little blebs. This is a specimen from Transylvania that actually is the type locality for hessite. It's a magnificent specimen, all of maybe 3 inches across. And this is an even better one. This is one of the truly great mineral locations for a particular rare mineral. These are rounded crystals of hessite. Again, rare tellurides. So if you go further to the east, you actually find an area near Sunshine, and that's got more of the tellurides. This is hessite with gold. That's the gold down there, and this is hessite. But mixed in with it all around there are some of these other ones. So if you add in the non-gold and silver telluride, in Colorado. We suddenly are expanding it out to not only Colorado-wide, but 4 species that are all copper tellurides and cameronite, which is a silver copper telluride, all found at Vulcan, which is this little bitty district over in Vulcan in Gunnison County. And that turns out to be one of the more prolific locations for Colorado-type locations than almost any place until you go to the Colorado Plateau, which turns out to be important. So, if you look at this central Boulder County area, you've got several different kinds of mineralization, and this area around Sugarloaf is one that has been important for Coloradoite. This is a band of Coloradoite. That band is probably 3/8 of an inch across. Not very big. Again, a very good specimen. Lots of little bitty shiny things. No good crystals. And down at Magnolia, again, important tellurides. These are petsite crystals mixed in with gold. It's really a magnificent specimen. And there is some Coloradoite and some more of these things that are all very small. This is the world for micromounters more than anything else. And from that same location, this specimen is native tellurium. It's on exhibit actually in the museum. It's one of those ones that turns out to be truly spectacular, and it actually shows the crystal pattern in a series of growths here. And it's one of the things that we're truly proud of, but the average person walks by and just looks at the next rock. So we're going to finally end up in the area around the Jamestown area. And this is again a place where you find spectacular specimens. This is, according to some people who like to say that some minerals resemble certain things. There is one person that says this looks like a chicken, and it's gold, but those crystals are all petsite, and some of the little stuff around them there are probably Coloradoite and maybe some of those other minerals. And this just shows you how ridiculously aesthetic some of these things can get to be, according to whether you want to call it a lizard or some sort of a bird or an alligator. It has a funny headdress that's composed of telluride minerals, petsite, and some other things on this gold bird. So, these are the minerals that you would recognize the name, or at least I recognize the name, that are type minerals from Colorado. There are very few outside of carnotite, which is a uranium-vanadium mineral, fervenite, which is a vanadium mineral, hewitite, which is a vanadium mineral, and metahewitite, if you have one, you always have the other, which is also a vanadium mineral. The list is huge of things that are essentially unrecognizable. You go on Mindat and find photographs, and they're all taken of all of these uranium, vanadium minerals. All of the specimens are at LA County Museum. They have something like one type specimen and 3 or 4 co-types that are all back there in the drawers. They're not going to display them either. They're not truly aesthetic. As micromounts, they are. Some of them are really very, very attractive. But I've never seen anybody that had one. Believe me, I would have photographed it and showed you this. And when I started out on this project, I actually thought, oh, well, I'm going to be able to go through our micromount collection and find specimens of all of this stuff. Not true. They're rare, they're hard to identify, and they're rare. So, thank you very much. Give me 3 years, I might find enough specimens to actually photograph and do another talk.
So, any questions? This is your chance.
Not really a question, I'm sure Ed, thank you, Ed, great, very interesting. Ed could go on and tell a million more mineral stories here, but I'll just add one that I looked up while he was giving his talk. I was curious about, he mentioned the fellow who was the director of the Mint, Shermer, and I know there was a mineral Shermerite, so I looked it up as you were talking, and Shermerite is a very complex lead, bismuth, sulfur salt mineral, and it was considered and named after him, so it would have been a Colorado type mineral, and I'm sure we have it listed in the Minerals of Colorado book, but the current literature, again, it's very complicated chemistry and structure to study these. It's currently considered a discredited mineral because it's really a mixture of 2 other sulfur salts, probably, so it's not counted as a valid mineral. Otherwise, it would be.
I think we actually listed it in Minerals of Colorado.
Yeah, and it was subsequently.
Yeah, subsequently discredited. And one of the things when you start looking at all of this stuff, and this fascinates me, when I took mineralogy, I would look at something like, it's actually pronounced Weissite. It's named for Louis Weiss, who was a German, and he owned one of the major mines at Vulcan. And I look at that thing and I say, what the hell is going on with this Cu 1.81? I was taught that you use round numbers. And how this got started, I'm not exactly sure. On Zunilite, you can look up the formula from a textbook 10 years ago, and it won't have aluminum 1.3 in there. You would have multiplied the thing out and actually gotten rid of the 1.3, and everything would have been whole numbers. And I think there was Linus Pauling that actually said, this is how we should be doing it, guys. And he's long gone. So I guess people don't pay attention now. But you get into all of this weird stuff when you start looking at the telluride, at the uranium, vanadium minerals. There's all these fractions that are in there, but you have to realize what that means is 1.3. So there is a 3/10 of an ion of aluminum. And I don't know how you do that without splitting the atom, and that doesn't make any sense. But this is the world of the rare minerals. And so if you start looking at type minerals, believe me, you will encounter this stuff. Don't try and understand it. It's just weird. So thank y'all very much.